Howdy and welcome to the Junction Cast. We're back with episode 12. As always, I'm David Francis, and with me is Rob White.
Howdy, howdy. Welcome back.
Rob had a very exciting past week and has a great piece of news to share with you all, and I'll let him get to that.
Yeah, so I was actually able to get my dog to start peeing outside more. I'm really proud of her for that. No, just kidding. Actually, the biggest piece of news for me right now is actually I just accepted a teaching position over at A&M Consolidated. I'm going to be a Tiger. I'm going to be the new government and economics teacher over there.
Man, that's exciting.
Yeah, pretty excited. My mom has been a long-time teacher, and high school has always been a very interesting time for a lot of people, and I always thoroughly enjoyed it. So being able to get back into that and really contribute and help out this next generation through the likes of being able to teach government and economics is probably something that I feel very called to do. So
yeah, that's
pretty
awesome.
Excited about that.
That's awesome, man. We're super excited, and obviously great for you. If all of you who listen don't know, Rob is incredibly involved with Aggie soccer, with Aggie baseball, in not a official capacity really, but I know at least for me, whenever I was a student coming up, Rob was kind of the guy at those events, helping lead the student body and cheering on the Aggies. And so, that's awesome for you. You get to stay in town, get to continue going to those sporting events and doing obviously what you love. And also, staying close to the school and, at least for this podcast is concerned, having connection there.
Yeah, it's exciting because I've lived in College Station, basically 2010 to 14, and then summer 14 through 15, I spent 1 year in Houston. Then I came back up here, and I've been bouncing around through several different jobs, and now finally having something that's very solid. I feel like there's been a lot of growth there, and I'm pretty excited about that. So,
oh, man, that's awesome, and we're super excited for you. We got a really full show for you here today. The first thing on our docket here on episode 12, we got SEC Media Days just finished up last week, and lo and behold, just as Kevin Sumlin opened up the show back in 2012, they're going to let Jimbo Fisher open up the show here in 2018, and he had a lot of good things to say, not only about the A&M football program, but about A&M itself. He talked a lot about how much different A&M really was to everywhere else he's been. He talked about how it's hard to compare A&M to other places because just so many different things as far as tradition and whatnot goes. And he opened up the press conference with a howdy. And to those of you that don't know, here at A&M, whenever we say howdy, you say howdy back. And so in class, it's kind of a excuse to get everyone to shut up and pay attention. And so Jimbo Fisher sits down, says howdy, and everybody just kind of sits there, and he has to explain to them, well, when I say howdy, you say howdy back, and this is how we start our conversation. And so I thought that was kind of cool. He didn't have to do that, but from everything that he's done since we hired him back in December, everything to me about Jimbo Fisher has screamed that this is a guy that really fits here.
I mean, the man, he wears maroon everywhere. He has cowboy boots that he will wear everywhere. He rides horseback. He says howdy. And the more that you've seen him interact with folks on campus, the more he's starting to buy in. Like, you can tell that it's definitely an acquired taste, but once you start drinking the Kool-Aid, you start to realize just what A&M has to offer, and you really kind of get settled. So,
oh, absolutely.
It's been pretty exciting seeing him get to go through that process.
Yeah, it's been great. He talked about, immediate success and whether or not that's something that he sees, is yet to be seen. But he said, quote, you have a timetable. Your timetable is now. You want to win immediately, and that's your place. But is that realistic? I don't know. Could it be? Yes. Could it not be? Yes. It's all about the process of putting things into place. And we'll talk about this in just a few minutes, but he is putting those pieces into place, it seems like, to build a strong future for A&M football.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, all you have to do is look at the recruiting work he did when he just first got down here, trying to shore up the 2018 class and retain some of those recruits, and then obviously the work that we'll be talking about on his 2019 class that's coming up shortly. But yeah, he has done a very good job of kind of setting the expectation that he expects to win here, and he wants people to win here with
Yeah,
him.
that's been very clear. He's been, or at least to me, it's been very clear from what he's said and the way he's handled himself that he's not screwing around. Like this is, a very serious deal to him. He did not come here. He's talked, a lot about his relationship with Scott Woodward, the AD, and he's talked a lot about his relationship with other people, and that's what really drew him to A&M, and that's all fine and dandy. But at the end of the day, he came here because, and again, this is my opinion, he came here because he sees an opportunity to win championships. He sees the building blocks necessary to win games, to win big games. And so I really feel like he's going to jump out the gate. But I think he's realistic. He goes on further. He explains that, the SEC, especially SEC West, is very tough. A lot about, conditioning, a lot about you've got to, have your body in a certain place. You've got to, have your mind in a certain place. It's physical. You got to have discipline. You got to be tough. So I think he understands that it may not be realistic, right, that we win the SEC championship year one. That may not be realistic. But in that same sentence, he can say that, that may not happen, but it's always going to be a goal, and it's eventually going to be an expectation.
Yeah, I honestly think looking forward, I think he has the right mindset of what he's looking for with this program. I think the man really is prepared to win for the future. And I mean, that's what he's trying to do. I don't really think he's going to come out and just kick the door down year one. I mean, you're expecting that particular type of event to happen. You need certain X factors on the team, like a once in a lifetime type quarterback, or, building blocks from a previous team that just ended up gelling better in the system, various previous examples that we're not getting into any specifics with. But you really do see that he is preparing for a long-term goal here, which is going to be to dethrone Nick Saban and take over the SEC West, therefore the SEC, therefore the country. That's right. What he's shooting for.
Exactly. And it's a lofty goal that he has, but to me at least, it seems like he believes in it. It seems like he is holding himself, even before the players, he's holding himself to a certain level of excellence. And then that will translate down to the coaches, to the staff, and then that will translate down further to the team. And then even there, I think that translates further down to fans and students and stuff like that, holding ourselves to a certain level of excellence. And I don't think he's scared of that. The talk with Kevin Sumlin always was, well, what should our expectations be, right? We're A&M. Should our expectation be a 10-win season, right? And even still, Kevin Sumlin achieved that line once. Or should our expectations be what Kevin Sumlin did? Like, should we just be okay winning 8 games and once a season beating a pretty good team at home with, a lot of fans in the stands? Like, is that an okay expectation? Or even further, should the expectation be we're going to compete for the SEC West, we're going to compete for the SEC, and at least every other or every 3 years, we're going to compete for a national championship. And so I think that he's been, very clear that he has a certain expectation of excellence, and as long as his staff, his coaches, and then the players can buy into that, and that they can set a level of expectation and do the work to meet that, then I think that we're going to be in a pretty good spot.
I completely agree. I think the guy really does have the right mindset. I mean, he came in here, saw what we had, seen the facilities that we had, and obviously the recruiting hotbed that is Texas. And he said, we're going to really lock this bad boy down. And so I really think that he's moving forward with the right mindset, and whatever he's telling these recruits, they're buying in. So pretty excited about it, and really excited to see what he's going to do here.
Yeah, it is absolutely especially for me, who's grown up watching A&M and had to go through some tough stuff, especially in these last couple of years. It is very exciting to see where Jimbo Fisher is taking this program, at least to what we can see. I mean, we can't read the future. We have no idea what's going to happen, but I like the signs. I like where we're headed from what I've seen so far.
Completely agree.
Well, even today, Jimbo Fisher received some more great news. The 24th commitment of the 2019 recruiting class officially committed to Texas A&M. Athlete from Louisiana, Christian Harris, was recruited to play linebacker, a position that the Aggies have sorely missed out on in recent years, but with the likes of even Claude George a couple years ago, you have Tyrell Dodson now coming in and really filling in a deep leadership position, something that's really been missed since, Von Miller's senior season.
Yeah, no, we pickpocketed him out of Baton Rouge, so right out of LSU's backyard. He's a pretty stocky athlete, 6'1", 225, plenty of room to grow. But, he's number 6 in the state of Louisiana, 10th at his position of just athlete in the United States. So I think the kid's got a lot of spunk, and I'm pretty excited that he committed here. So we're going to keep an eye on him. It's been fun watching this recruiting process.
It has been fun, at the very least. 24/7 Football has the Aggies at the 3rd rank nationally as far as football class commitments. But that 3rd national rank also is 3rd in the SEC.
Oh yeah, no, this league's overrated. Don't let those ranks fool you at all.
So it'll be definitely very interesting. Obviously, Alabama is up there having a great class. Georgia is up there having a great class. Yeah. The regulars are up there. USC, Texas. These other schools are up there having great classes. It will all come down to on the field performance, though.
Oh, absolutely. It always does. It's great to have a recruiting class, but if the last few years have been any kind of indication, the last several years of the Kevin Sumlin era, Texas had better recruiting classes than A&M, but they still couldn't even make a bowl game, much less anything else. So the important thing is you got to be able to bust your butt on the field and really develop that talent. And, in reality, it's safe to say that going forward, Jimbo Fisher has the right mindset on that front, and I think he will get us to where we need to be.
Absolutely. And I think my biggest takeaway thus far, having watched very little film on our recruits yet, and maybe that will be a future episode as we watch some film on some recruits and give some feedback there. Having watched very little film on these guys, just from what I see in ranking and in what these guys' measurables are, to me, I am the most confident, or I feel the most confidence coming out of the group of defensive backs that we've recruited. Several cornerbacks, several safeties, a group that has struggled at A&M for several years, has been that defensive back group, and always looking to get better, always looking to push to a new level. This year may be a turning point, but it certainly seems that next year, once this recruiting class comes in, at least the hype building up to this class signifies that defensive back group may get a bit better.
All you have to do is look at our top 5 recruits just by ranks, and if you're looking at those 5 kids, 4 of the 5 are defensive, and 3 of the 5 are the defensive backs. You have 2 safeties and a cornerback right there. But you have, and they're all 4 stars. They're all upper level athletes. They're all from Texas, and so it's good to see that these kids are going to start developing. And you just keep going down that list. You have a lot of defensive names on there, which is definitely good to have. Especially at this point in time, when we have been struggling on defense quite as much as we have, even under the likes of Chief. I think it's good to have these type of players definitely ready to buy in and get in Jimbo Fisher's system. So we'll keep an eye on those kids, especially as the recruiting processes continue.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, whenever it's my fault, to be honest. But whenever we miss a couple of weeks between episodes, we obviously miss some big stuff happening in the world of sports. And a couple of weeks ago, I was working a football camp up in Arlington, and I missed apparently a hilarious story between some recruiting between Oklahoma and A&M. Rob has a little more information on this than I do. I'm going to let him take it away, but apparently this is pretty funny.
Well, the big one, so, Jeffrey Carter, cornerback at 4-star, he's out of Mansfield, Texas, was heading up for a recruiting trip up to Oklahoma, and he got a nail in his tire, and unfortunately ended up missing the trip. But the story was he got a nail in his tire, and they got pictures later on that confirmed that they were at least at a body shop in Bryan getting it put together. But he then turned around and made his commitment to Texas A&M a couple of days later, and just the amount of hate and irritation that came flying out of the Oklahoma camp was astounding. You had several different news media outlets, some small-time guys like Heartland College Sports. This was their headline. The story of 4-star cornerback Jeffrey Carter, who bailed on an OU barbecue trip and picked Texas A&M as is recruiting at its absolute worst. Okay.
What?
Recruiting at its worst?
At its worst?
At its worst.
This story didn't even include cocaine.
No, it didn't include a gold Trans Am either. So.
Oh, and that was my favorite. Was someone brought that up on Twitter? I saw kind of the backlash of this story on Twitter.
Yeah.
And my favorite part was, like we gave Eric Dickerson a gold Trans Am, and he was like, yeah, A&M all the way. And then like a week later, he's like, nah, I'm gonna go to SMU. And I'm going to become one of the greatest running backs of all time.
Yeah. And like I can't remember what his name is, but there was an Oklahoma coach, that was subtweeting about this kid who said, "Oh, we don't need kids. We don't need people part of our program that don't have integrity. They don't have, the desire to be part of something big or whatever. Whatever he said."
Yeah.
But
whatever he said, probably to save face.
But it's like, why would especially if you're a coach at one of these programs? I mean, don't get me wrong. We've had our fair share of coaches that have done something like that in the past.
Every school has.
But don't tweet about the kids. It's their decision. Like, let them make it.
And don't get me wrong. I see a situation in which this kid definitely never drove over a nail. Don't get me wrong.
Absolutely.
I see that situation where he's driving through and he gets a phone call and it's like, "Hey, heard you going up to that barbecue. Why don't you stay here and have some barbecue of our own?" And conversations happen, and recruiting can be a shady business, and I don't deny that by any stretch of the imagination. But when the kid said something happened, I try at least in my mind to back off, give him the benefit of the doubt until he gives me a reason to believe otherwise.
I mean, in reality, if I had to tell you the truth, I really do think that the kids at this point in time really just kind of backed off. Like, he just wanted to back off on it and say, I don't necessarily want to hurt anybody's feelings, but I'm not wanting to go to Oklahoma. I like A&M better. And he picked A&M. But, it's just, especially with these Oklahoma fans, they are just being so vile to this kid online. I'm like, guys, you have the number 6 class in the nation, number 1 in the Big 12, number 6 overall. I mean, you're sitting here with 2 5-stars, 10 4-stars, yada yada yada. You have a very good class, so there's really no reason on this planet that you guys should be as mad as you are about this one kid.
Right.
Like, y'all need to chill out. Don't get me wrong. I understand it's frustrating when somebody doesn't pick your school, but they typically have a good reason for it. Sometimes I just really do feel that they have a better situation somewhere versus another school, or whatever. And I think this was my personal favorite analogy that I used online, and it got some pretty good circulation. A&M is the fat kid that's constantly being made fun of for being the fat kid, right? So the fat kid decides he's going to go out and get a gym membership and go to the gym. He's getting made fun of at the gym.
Right.
Because people are like, you're the fat kid. You shouldn't be working out. You need to be the fat
Yeah,
kid.
how dare you come to this gym where us athletic people are?
It's like, because A&M is the fat kid. A&M is the fat kid that's trying to get better. So that's what we did. We bought our gym, our gym membership. It was $75 million.
It was more than that. It was 500 million plus 75 plus whatever it cost to renovate Bright.
But, we went out there and we spent a stupid amount of money to make this happen. But the point is, A&M has everything going for it at this point, minus one factor: the relatively empty trophy case.
Yeah.
And you know what? That's fine.
And there's almost no relation to it. I mean, that trophy case has a Heisman and a Cotton Bowl trophy, and I don't know much else.
Yeah, well, I mean, all you have to do is, you want to talk about a program that, is a theoretical fall from grace. I mean, look at Tennessee football, man. You want to talk about a program that was a big-time program for the longest time. I mean, these guys were winning national championships left and right, upside down and sideways. I mean, they have 16 conference titles. They have 6 claimed national championships.
And you can almost chalk that up to the same situation, as kind of like a Nebraska, as a Miami, as a SMU. I mean, there have been worse falls.
Exactly, but that's the point. I mean, people talked about A&M and their prestige when it comes to football, and I'm like, okay, here's the thing: if you had to ask me right now, which is the better football program, Tennessee or A&M, which one would you say? Which one's in a better position?
We can just go on the 2 days of coaching nonsense that Tennessee had to go through in December to answer that question.
Exactly. I mean, coaches were abandoning them left and right. Like, no chance they wanted to go there. 6 national titles, and you know what? A&M was a more favorable pick. Why? Because your history does not define your future. All you have to do is look at Miami in the 80s. They were a garbage football program till Schnellenberger came in and turned that program into an absolute monster.
Yeah.
And, and that's all it takes. A couple of good coaches. Yeah, they didn't do it the traditional way, and I think that really irritated a lot of people. But, I mean, that's the situation A&M's in right now. All of these kids from Texas are all saying, you know what? Let's all go to A&M. Let's all go follow Jimbo. Let's turn this thing into a monster. And you know what? I have a feeling here in the next couple of years, people are going to start really hating us more than they already do.
Oh, Rob, I hope. I hope.
I have a feeling.
I hope. And speaking of good football teams, Rob, ESPN, the ever good benevolent overlords that they are, had a piece of mind to write maybe the worst article ever written about college football. ESPN put out an article about they ranked the best champions over the past 20 years of college football. They ranked them 1 through 20 or 21 or whatever. And the team that they put at number 1, the team that they put at number 1, first of all, should not be number 1, okay? 1, I'm not saying that just because Nick Saban is Nick Saban that all of his teams were the best teams to ever play college football. But Nick Saban is Nick Saban. He's won 6 national championships, all of which are on this list. Mm-hmm. And the highest one is number 6?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you got to wonder, what metrics are they using? I mean, I understand you're looking at overall record with a lot of these teams, but at the same time, you have to look at the teams they played.
Yeah, and to me, the number 1 team, as we can let you know, is the 2005 Texas Longhorns. This is the team that ESPN decided was the best championship-winning team over the past 20 years. Which to me, and maybe this wasn't the way they were meaning it to be said, but to me, that says that if I had a tournament of all of these teams, that the 05 Longhorns would win that tournament.
And I don't believe that for a hot minute.
No. They were
Absolutely
good.
Absolutely not.
They were good, okay?
Yeah.
But first of all, let's not forget that they were almost not even as good as the team that was second.
Yeah.
They barely won, and yes, it's history, and we never know, blah, blah, blah. But
it was a great game.
If Reggie Bush gets the ball maybe a couple more times, then I don't know if Texas wins that game in the Rose Bowl.
No, I mean, it was a tightly contested football game. Everybody that watched it knows it. Texas, yes, they ended up winning, but it was not any kind of cakewalk by any stretch.
Yeah. And really, to me, we can talk about and debate about the best teams over the past 20 years, but that is not the reason I brought up this article. Okay? The reason I brought up this article is because of the first sentence in the explanation of the championship. This says, the 2005 Longhorns are the top championship team of the past 20 years, in large part because, you ready? They claim the best player of the past 20 years. Hold on, ESPN, just for a moment. Let me just have just a little bit of a moment here. You're telling me, and I know awards are voted on, and maybe they're not always fair, and Ndamukong Suh should have won the Heisman Trophy, okay? But you're telling me that the best player in the past 20 years didn't even win the Heisman Trophy in his best season.
Yeah.
Really? And I did a little dig on numbers, and I don't have them pulled up right here, but there was another quarterback who played in the past 20 years who did win the Heisman Trophy and who had a higher completion percentage, who had more passing yards, who had more passing touchdowns, who had more rushing yards, who had more rushing touchdowns, who had a higher yard per carry. And that's Johnny Manziel.
In a tougher league.
And I'm not even going to try and claim, okay, that Johnny Manziel is the best player in the past 20 years. Maybe he is, maybe he's not. I honestly have not done enough research to answer that question. But I have watched enough college football to know that Vince Young was not the best player in the past 20 years.
No, I mean, and we could say one way or the other about Johnny being the best player of all time. I will definitely say he's the most exciting player I've ever seen play a football game.
Many people would say that.
And that's not even a contested question. That's absolute truth in my mind. But no, I mean, I have a hard time believing that Vince Young would be considered the best player in the last 20 years.
Well, I can even go as far as to say that I think that there are players that didn't win the Heisman Trophy that were better players than Vince Young was.
Sure.
I believe that Christian McCaffrey was probably a better player than Vince Young was.
Yeah.
He broke all sorts of rushing records, and he did it at Stanford. And we can all probably agree that the Pac-12 is less threatening or was less powerful when he was playing than the Big 12 was when Vince Young was playing.
True.
But the way Christian McCaffrey dismantled teams and the rate at which he did it was unbelievable.
Yeah, it wasn't fair. Like, having him on the same field with other players was just asking for trouble.
And I think, without having looked up any statistics, another name that draws to my mind was the winner of the Heisman Trophy when Texas lost their most attempt at a national championship, and that was Mark Ingram. Yeah. And he had a phenomenal year. He had an absolutely fantastic year. And I think something that this article ignores is, the resume of Vince Young. He had a good 2005 season. He was a Heisman finalist. He won the national championship, obviously. But when you put the rest of his college career in there, it lessens his resume. But even if we just look at all of the best players over the past 20 years at their best season, I still don't think he boasts the best season of any player in the past 20 years.
No.
And to
it's
me,
hard to say that.
To me, I clicked on this article because, college football fan, and I said, okay, what are they going to say? Who did they rank where? Why did they rank them where? And I read that first sentence and I just immediately closed it. And that was about all I needed to know that was maybe the most ridiculous article that's ever been written.
Yeah, it wasn't good. I mean, you look at Texas's schedule that year. You look at all the teams that played. Yes, they dismantled teams pretty much left and right. There was really nobody on the schedule that really posed much of a threat at any point, save for the championship game. I mean, we gave them a little bit of a contested game in College Station. But, I mean, they went down to Houston, played at Reliant in the Big 12 championship, and beat Colorado 70-3, you know?
Yeah, that's
illegal.
That's not great.
No, but the other highly contested game, they played a very good Ohio State team at their place and beat them, and that's commendable.
An Ohio State team that, again, has been consistent.
Yes.
Even since the early BCS era has been a consistent contender. Though that has changed maybe in the past couple of days based on recent news.
Yeah.
Yesterday morning, Brett McMurphy, who is known far and wide through college football reporting and college football writing, used to work for ESPN, was let go last year, maybe the year before that. I don't exactly remember when, but it was when one of those times ESPN had one of those massive layoffs, and he has been kind of doing his own work by himself since then. Released a post on Facebook that was basically his story detailing some very, very disturbing news about Ohio State head coach Urban Meyer. And effectively what happened is Brett McMurphy obtained some text messages that were with the victim of some alleged domestic abuse by a now former Ohio State assistant coach. Mm-hmm. This is sadly not maybe huge news anymore. Not saying it shouldn't be, but nowadays, especially in sports, stuff like this happens all the time, and it's very sad, and I think we can all agree that it needs to stop, that it is wrong, that it is absolutely disgusting that people like this are allowed to get away with these acts because of their position. However, at Big Ten Media Days, Urban Meyer claimed that he had no knowledge of the alleged incidents.
Yes.
He pushed that off, said, I didn't know anything about it. And then this story comes out by Brett McMurphy, and it turns out that not only did Urban Meyer know about it, but maybe even his wife knew about it.
Yeah.
And that doesn't quite bode well for him.
No, it doesn't. Because, I mean, it could be any little comment here or there could absolutely spin it to a point where it could be a very negative story for him.
Absolutely. And so, based on different Ohio State policies, Urban Meyer was paid on administrative leave, placed on paid administrative leave. And at this point, it's all kind of up in the air as to what's going to happen. There have been different reports that maybe Urban Meyer will be fired. There have been some people on Twitter that are around, the Ohio State system, and they really don't think he's going to be fired. And, I think even those people that are supporters of Ohio State are just as disturbed by all of this as everybody else is. They just don't think that he'll be let go even in the wake of all of this. And it is something that, at least maybe needs to be talked about, especially if Ohio State has certain policies in place for their coaches and for their staff. And, based on the laws in Ohio and based on this and that. In my personal opinion, and really this is just me, I think that really the worst thing that Urban Meyer here did was lie. What he should have said at the Big Ten Media Days is, yes, I knew about it. We talked about it. We worked through it. We notified the necessary authorities. We took whatever steps, whatever. I think that should have happened when this incident happened. I think that it should have been, if you find out something like this has happened, you take those steps, and if that, individual who's had allegations placed upon them is found guilty, then they should be punished. I mean, by the law, wherever they live. I don't necessarily think jumping all over Urban Meyer is necessarily the greatest thing in the world, but he did lie, and he had an opportunity to tell the truth. He had an opportunity to give the knowledge that he had, and he didn't do that. And so because of that, he's going to face, I think, a lot more than he would have had he handled this a little bit differently.
Well, I think the most important thing, especially in situations like this, is to keep everything extremely fluid and extremely open. Yes, exactly. You receive a bit of news and you know about it. The first thing you should do is say, okay, we are going to take care of this. I have knowledge of it. We're going to take the necessary steps to make sure that whoever needs to be punished will be punished, and we will try our best to make sure this doesn't happen again. And that would have solved so many problems out of this whole garbage. Yeah. And, don't get me wrong. I'm not going to be sitting here and, trying to vindicate Urban Meyer, because I do think that he is a head coach that does have his responsibilities. And one of his responsibilities is making sure that he is honest about the various different happenings within his team.
Absolutely.
And it does look bad on your character when you kind of push something off like that, when it's very clearly an important issue. So I can understand the frustrations there.
Yeah. And, I think that, placing all of this blame on Urban Meyer is maybe not exactly fair. Again, he may have had a duty to tell the truth. He may have had a duty by law and by policy to do something about it. And if he didn't do that, again, punish him to whatever extent, those policies and laws allow you to punish him. But I have no doubt in my mind that all head coaches are very close with their staff, that all head coaches care about those men as people. They care about their staff, men and women, as people. Sure. And so when this, probably comes across Urban Meyer's desk, I don't think it's immediately, oh my gosh, well, I'm going to report you to the police right now. Even if that's what should have been done, I think there may have been okay, well, let's talk about this. Let's try and work through this. And that's perfectly fine. I still think, he has an obligation when he learns of things like this to inform the police, inform the authorities, whatever. But I think that this kind of brings up a point that has become all too common nowadays, is that there are a lot of people that want universities to be judge and jury on a lot of these things, and that's just plainly not allowed.
No.
The universities do not have the power to imprison people. They do not have the power to find people guilty in a court of law, and this is a topic we could have a whole show on. But
sure.
But it is to a point where there are a lot of people that are angry at Ohio State. There are people that are angry at Baylor. There are people angry at Michigan State and at A&M. And there's been a lot of these different things that have happened to where people are coming with a lot of anger towards universities. And the fact of the matter is, universities don't have a whole lot of power whenever it comes to the legal sphere. And I am kind of in the belief that that's the way it should be. I don't necessarily think that, I don't necessarily think that Ohio State needs to learn about this and then, tell this head coach, hey, you're fired, and oh, by the way, you're going to jail. I don't think that that's necessarily where their place in society belongs. That being said, Urban Meyer was wrong. If he is fired, if he is fined, if he is suspended, whatever happens, he had it coming. This was easy to fix. Tell the truth from the beginning. Be open from the beginning, and stuff like this doesn't happen.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you shouldn't have to rely on the universities to be, punishing these people in the long run. But I mean, they do have their policies in place where I feel like they should have disciplinary action as far as what you're getting paid and whatnot and things along those lines. But, I think definitely going forward, they need to leave this up to the judicial system to take care of a lot of these issues.
Absolutely. So. All right, well, that's enough of the serious talk. That's enough of the seriousness for this week. We're gonna go to a bit of a lighter topic, and you know what, Rob? You know what I really love?
What's that?
I really love games.
Oh yeah,
Games are my
absolutely.
favorite. We've been known to play a couple of different games here on this show, and this week I'm featuring a new game, brand new.
Ooh. Ooh.
It's themed on the idea of worst case scenario, but worst is not as fun. So we're gonna play a little game called weirdest case scenario.
Okay.
And I've got a couple topics, and we'll just go ahead and start with the one we are just talking about. So, weirdest case scenario, okay, Urban Meyer gets fired, right? Let's just
Okay.
pretend we're in the future. It's a day from now. It's announced through all the channels Urban Meyer has been fired as the head coach of Ohio State.
Okay.
What is the weirdest case scenario of things that happen after that, and who ends up being head coach at Ohio State?
Weirdest case scenario. Are we? And I think situations referring to ourselves as well could be on the table.
I don't know about that. I don't know if one of us is going to end up as head coach at Ohio State.
No, not at all. I think weirdest case scenario: Ohio State fires, starts probing around. They end up in Texas. They somehow whip Jimbo Fisher to come up there, and he's like, "Oh, okay, why not?" And then A&M's desperately looking for a head coach, and ends up poaching Art Briles from over in Italy, where he's currently trying to form a team. I think
That is weird. I don't like that so much, but it is
that
weird.
would be the weirdest case scenario in my head.
Oh man, weirdest case scenario. Yeah, okay. So here's my weirdest case scenario. So, weirdest case scenario: Ohio State fires Urban Meyer in a great state of disarray. They are forced to hire great Ohio State coaching legend Jim Tressel. They hire him back. It's Jim Tressel time again. However, this is a problem because Jim Tressel is the athletic director, I believe, still at Youngstown State. Is he not?
That sounds right. I
think he is. We gotta do a little Google here. Jim Tressel. Yes. Oh, he's the president. Excuse me. He is the president of Youngstown State. All right. So Ohio State. They hire back Jim Tressel. We're going back to the good old days of Ohio State football. We're gonna win another championship. It's gonna be really great. However, there is a problem.
Okay.
Youngstown State needs a new president.
Okay.
And they are left to hire another former football coach in their current head football coach, Bo Pelini. Bo Pelini is now the president of Youngstown State. However, this leaves another problem. Youngstown State
needs a head coach.
Needs a head football coach. And who else has done enough time in the icy cold to be able to go up to Ohio and do a great job coaching football at Youngstown State?
Oh, no. Who'd you have in mind?
Mike Sherman. Obviously, it's Mike Sherman. He's been spending time in Canada. He's been getting good.
Yeah,
he was able to recruit Johnny Manziel. Okay, he was able to get him to come not once to his place of business, but twice. Okay, got him to come.
We're pretty excited about that, though, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Got him to come to Montreal from Hamilton. Okay, but once again, we're faced with another problem. The Montreal Alouettes now need a head football coach. Thus steps in head football coach Johnny Football.
And he finally gets to pursue his lifelong goal of coaching Canadian football.
There you have it. The weirdest case scenario, Urban Meyer is fired, and therefore Johnny Manziel is the head football coach of the Montreal Alouettes.
This game is not nearly as fun because I haven't had any prep time.
I had no prep time. I made all that up right now.
Okay, that's pretty good.
But don't worry. You're going to have a little chance of redemption because we got our second and final round of weirdest case scenario.
Okay.
There was an article that came out this week that said that Tua Tagovailoa is likely the new starting quarterback at the University of Alabama. After 2 years, Jalen Hurts has had a wonderful career at Alabama.
Yeah, no question.
But was benched during the national championship game in favor of freshman Tua Tagovailoa. He was placed in. He won the national championship. And so now, through summer and now going into fall ball, it is said that it is likely that Tua will become the new starting quarterback. So that leaves me with the question.
Mm-hmm.
Jalen Hurts transfers, weirdest case scenario.
Weirdest case scenario. Well, first off, he will transfer naturally where every former recruit from the state of Texas that ends up at a team and doesn't necessarily appreciate their scenario where they transfer. You know exactly where I'm talking about, the University of Houston. He will transfer to U of H and subsequently take the Cougars to a semi-decent season where he will get fed up and then transfer to the University of Texas where he will be benched under the likes of Tom Herman. He will get sick, fed up, and then after that season take off to the NFL where he is a forever and always a backup on a third string in a practice squad.
Oh, that's
there.
upsetting. You're putting Jalen Hurts in a pretty bad place. That's kind of.
Hey, he's from Texas. He should have thought about staying in Texas. The loser. What was he thinking?
Well, he was thinking that Kyler Murray and Kyle Allen were both going to stay at A&M, and boy, was he wrong.
He was dead wrong.
Weirdest case scenario, Jalen Hurts transfers from Alabama, and I agree with you. He goes to Houston, where every good transfer goes. And you forgot something. He's going to have to sit out a season.
Oh, of course.
So he goes to Houston, he sits out a season, it's his senior season, okay? Only there's a problem. He transfers to Houston this season to sit out a season, which piques the interest of former Houston head coach Tom Herman.
Okay.
Tom Herman immediately signs his letter of resignation and begs to be let back to the University of Houston. Because they have nothing better to do, they allow him. And so, once again, Tom Herman is the head coach of the University of Houston. He takes Jalen Hurts to the national championship game where they throw for 937,000 yards because that's whenever Houston has a good quarterback, that's what that quarterback does, apparently, is they throw for like millions of yards or whatever, vis-a-vis Case Keenum.
Yeah.
Speaking of, Jalen Hurts wins a national championship at the University of Houston because he's too good. He transfers under Tom Herman. He transfers. He's too good. The talent is then gone. Tom Herman is immediately fired. The University of Texas says, you're kind of rude. We don't want you. Also, whenever he's fired, they immediately hire Major Applewhite. So that's going on now. Jalen Hurts, after graduation, goes on to the NFL, where he competes in Super Bowl 57 against Case Keenum in, I don't know, it's in Houston. I don't know.
The Cougar Bowl. There you go.
Something like that. And both of them lose because that's what happens to the University of Houston. No, the Super Bowl ends in a tie. Andre Ware is so disgruntled that he runs on the field and rips off all of his clothes because he is so devastated that this could happen.
Yeah. So who does U of H play in that national championship game?
Oh my
and
gosh.
Puts up 9,000 yards on.
In the situation that Jalen Hurts transfers to the University of Houston, and then we have to wait a year, and Tom Herman switches schools.
Yeah. So
oh, man.
We're looking at the 2019-2020 season.
Man, that's a good question.
Who is the national championship contender that year?
The Kansas Jayhawks.
There you go.
They come out of nowhere to have the greatest recruiting class in college football history.
And then just get curb stomped by the team that was supposed to join the Big 12. That would be greatest.
Oh man. They lose to they beat Cincinnati in the semifinals and then lose to Houston. And then UCF claims the national championship again.
Of course. UCF. Oh, those kids.
Oh man. Oh man. Well, that's been a fun game of weirdest case scenario. I'm sure we'll have to bring that game back throughout the college football season as more weirder and weirder things occur. Well, the last thing we got on the docket this week is to talk about some rankings. It's getting to that point of the season where a lot of different websites and different entities are releasing their college football rankings. And so I figured, hey, let's dive into them a little bit. And let's talk about them and see what we like. First up is the ESPN College Football Preseason Power Rankings, which are a little bit different than, the coaches rankings, the AP, the college football playoff. I mean, these are based on, I think, a little bit different metrics. It has, I think, more to do with potential, kind of less to do with, it's more future based, I think, rather than performance based. So obviously at number 1 they have Alabama.
Shocker.
Yeah, not at all whatsoever. At number 2 they have the best defensive line in the country with Clemson, which is, again, no shocker. No. They have at number 3 Ohio State with upcoming star running back J.K. Dobbins, who absolutely tore up opponents whenever he was given the ball this past season, and I am very, very excited to see what he can do in some more game time this year.
Yes. Now, Ohio State's got a lot of good pieces coming back. Obviously, maybe missing a certain piece. We already talked about that.
Yeah, who knows?
We'll see what happens.
At number 4, they have the University of Georgia. At number 5, still sticking around, they have Washington, who has continued to stick around up in the top of these preseason rankings since making the college football playoff a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I mean, they're still the favorite out of the Pac-12 right now. I mean, USC's not really quite up there just yet. They're still trying to work their way. I think, Stanford's still ahead of them at the moment.
Right.
But, you look at that division, I mean, the Pac-12 North honestly has more strength in it, which is definitely odd. But it's been interesting watching. We'll see what Washington has to offer.
Yeah. And in another fantastic opening weekend of college football, they're going to play Auburn to open up the season. So I think Washington-Auburn, could prove to be a great matchup. 2 fantastic quarterbacks in Jake Browning and Jarrett Stidham are going to face off, and I think that game could be a really, really good football game.
As much as I don't like these neutral site early season marquee matchups, I do like early season marquee matchups.
They are a lot of fun. It is.
Yeah.
It provides you with a good jump start right into the season, because we go through week 1 and then we get to really week 2, 3, 4, and there's not a lot going on. You have maybe 1 or 2 matchups, but that week 1 is really to get you through those opening weeks. I mean, week 1, obviously, you have this Washington-Auburn matchup. You have Michigan playing Notre Dame. You've got some other things. I mean, Alabama will play some marquee team somewhere, and so it's going to be very interesting. It is always, to me, a lot of fun to watch those games, especially week 1.
I agree.
Number 6, they have Wisconsin. No surprise, have a great offensive line, have a fantastic running back in Jonathan Taylor coming back to hopefully lead the Badgers to another chance at a Big Ten championship, another chance to maybe compete for a national title. At number 7, they have Oklahoma. We'll have to see what happens with Kyler Murray.
I'm hearing a lot of different stories out of that.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I'm hearing that he wants to just play baseball. I'm hearing that he may not even be the number 1 quarterback on that team, which to me doesn't make any sense.
No. I mean, Kyler Murray's built for the Big 12. I mean,
oh yeah.
Wrong. I mean, seeing him running around at A&M, I mean, it was fun when he's playing against teams that don't have a defense.
Right.
But the moment that he faced off against a real defense, he got absolutely lit up several times. So, he's going to have the opportunity to run around like a crazy man on that field there.
And there are a couple of defenses in the Big 12 that aren't the nation's best defenses, but that are better. I mean, they've improved in the past couple of years, and I think that even Kyler Murray has matured a little bit, and I think him being there with Lincoln Riley and being into that system, I think that he's matured enough to where if he plays a pretty good defense, he still has a shot. It's going to come down to the decisions he makes, obviously, as it always does. It's going to come down to, his conditioning. It's going to come down to his discipline. But I think that there's been enough time passed since he's been in a really important role, and stepping back and watching Baker Mayfield and that offense operate in the way that it did, I think he probably has learned enough to get to that point where he could compete at a pretty high level.
Yeah, I agree. It'll be interesting to see how they do.
Once again, in the top 10, at number 8, they have Penn State. At number 9, Miami. At number 10, Auburn.
Yeah. Auburn, didn't end the season quite the way they wanted to last year. I mean, when you beat the two teams that went on to compete for the national championship, that's never fun. So, you got to think that they're washing their hands of that and they're ready to move on.
Absolutely. Number 9, Miami, going to open against LSU on week 1. And I would be hard-pressed to pick the Tigers in that matchup. I think I'd pick the Hurricanes.
And I do think Miami's the better team. And, LSU is always a solid squad to be sure. But, yeah, I have a hard time picking at the moment, against those guys.
Number 10, Auburn, as we just said, is going to open up against Washington. I think Jarrett Stidham has the opportunity to be one of the best quarterbacks in the nation this year. I think that he has the opportunity to be the best quarterback in the nation. He is one of the best returning quarterbacks, of which there aren't a ton. And we'll have to get onto that in another episode, but there are not really a ton of super big quarterbacks that have a lot of experience, that are very good, that are returning this year, and so Jarrett Stidham could break out in that role. ESPN has Notre Dame at number 11, and at number 12, Michigan. These two teams will play each other week 1.
It's about time. Those two need to get back on the schedule with each other. It's a good matchup. People like it, so I always enjoy the Michigan Notre Dame game, so that'll be fun to watch, to be sure.
At 13, the Michigan State Spartans are there. At 14 is Stanford. Bryce Love is coming back to carry on this tradition of fantastic Stanford running backs.
Yeah, no. Stanford, definitely one of those downhill running teams, and it's been so enjoyable because, they really do play an old school style football, which is fun to watch.
And, they've had a very good running back to complement that style for several years. The first one, what was his name? I can't remember. The original one, before Christian McCaffrey. There was Christian McCaffrey and now Bryce Love, but even before Christian McCaffrey, he plays in the NFL now. I can't remember his name. He was drafted very highly in the NFL draft. He was also a Heisman candidate, another very good running back from Stanford. They have had this pedigree of having very good running backs for the last several years now.
Yeah, no, they've had a good one. There was one that was ahead of all of us. That was Toby Gerhart. He was
Toby
pretty solid.
Gerhart. That's who I was thinking of. Very good running back. They've had him for quite a while.
Yeah, he's up with the. I want to say he's playing with the. Well, he started off with the Vikings. I'm not sure if he's still there, but yeah.
ESPN.
Solid.
Yeah, ESPN has Virginia Tech at number 15. They have USC at number 16.
Yep.
They have first-year head coach with Mississippi State at 17. They have another first-year head coach, Florida State, at 18. Boise State at 19. I'll stop here with West Virginia at 20. Another fantastic quarterback I think that's returning is Will Grier.
Oh, absolutely. Will Grier. He put up some stupid numbers last year, too. Looking at them, I really do think that they're going to be a pretty hot contender over there in the Big 12, one that a lot of people aren't going to give a lot of looks to. I really do think they're a solid squad. So
absolutely.
We'll keep an eye on them.
They had great receivers, and they had a solid quarterback. Will Grier, in a lot of games last year, looked like he was just at that, almost at that next level. He was a good quarterback, but he was just at in a lot of those games was just at that line from being good to great. And I think this could be the year with enough work that he goes from good to great.
Yeah, we'll see how they do.
At 21, they have TCU. At 22, they have Texas.
Whoa. Texas, top 25 preseason. Isn't this like every year?
Of course it's every year.
Every single year. That's okay, though.
Of course. At 23, they have Oregon. At 24, they have UCF. And at 25...
Why would they disrespect the national champions like that? Send them so far down that list? Man.
Listen, even without Scott Frost, I think that team has an opportunity to be very good.
I don't disagree. I really do think that they're going to be a solid team out of the American. I think they're going to rock and roll. They'll do a good job. They'll play a lot of good teams. So, I think they're going to. I think they'll be okay. I mean, I'm not sure if they're going to be, BCS. New Year's Six. I guess not BCS now. Sorry, brain. But they're going to be like a New Year's Six team.
Yeah,
probably. Whether they win that game or not, that's up to debate. But they'll probably be there, or they'll be in a big bowl game.
yeah. Rounding out the preseason power ranking, top 25 at number 25 is South Carolina, which I believe is a bit of a sleeper. I think they have some great talent on the offensive side of the ball. I think their defense is probably going to be pretty good. And so it's going to be a situation where if South Carolina can play big in the big games, they could have a really good season.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, so looking ahead, and also looking at other teams that were receiving votes. So going down the list, LSU at 26, Utah's 27. We're at 28, just ahead of Florida and Oklahoma State. So I mean, we're not too far out of that either. So it should be interesting going forward.
The coaches poll was released, I believe, today, and it looks pretty much the same. There's a couple of jumps here and there. The only really huge big thing that sticks out to me is the difference in the last two teams. They have LSU at number 24 and Oklahoma State at number 25. So obviously some faith in Coach O over at LSU and some faith in Oklahoma State after a very, very fantastic beginning of a season last year and just kind of a fall apart during the last half.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see how they do. I mean, Oklahoma State's a pretty solid team most years. I mean, they've been pretty upper level Big 12 or upper middle of the road Big 12. They've been pretty decent last several years. LSU, they're a staple for that top 25 most years. So we'll see how all this pans out. There's a reason they have these polls.
Absolutely,
in the year, and there's a reason that they never look the same by the end of it.
Absolutely. So we'll close out the show today with one final question for you, Rob. If you had to put right now a number one at the top going into the season, kind of using but also kind of forgetting what happened last season, all those players returning, all the things that could be different, who do you put at the number one spot right now?
UCF. No, just kidding. Absolutely Alabama.
I thought you were serious. I was going to be like, whoa.
No, absolutely Alabama. I mean, you look at the tools they have. I mean, they have everything in place. They're going to be rocking and rolling. I mean, it's Nick Saban. They're going to be fine. I think they do have a couple of early tests that will be very interesting. Yeah, we have to go into their house, and depending on how well Jimbo has us prepared, that could be a very interesting game for them. But at the same time, I really do think Alabama has everything ready for another run at the playoff.
I think it's actually really close. I think Alabama is probably who I would put at number one as well, just because of Nick Saban, because of the staff, because of the pedigree, because they have been able to find so much success in recent years. And so I just believe that continues to translate year after year. And so I think that will be no different this year. But I don't think Clemson's that far behind. Obviously,
disagree.
Obviously, for me, Clemson, it's a question of who can play quarterback. Ohio State proved late in the season when JT Barrett went down that their quarterback coming up this year is going to be pretty darn good. Georgia has a pair of pretty good quarterbacks. Now they lost their running backs, but I have no doubt that the running backs they have in place are not going to be maybe too far behind. They'll be definitely not as good. We're talking about the best, I think, running back tandem in the country last year in Sonny Michel and what was his name? I'm blanking on everybody's names today. That's the worst. But the Georgia running back duo last year was absolutely phenomenal. But that being said, I think that a very, very fair number one position goes to Alabama. And then at 2, I think it's a toss-up between Clemson and Ohio State. And honestly, I really don't know if I can pick one or the other without watching them play a football game first.
I would say Clemson for now, but I mean that just makes it more entertaining when they come into College Station on September 8th.
It will be absolutely a must-watch event. We got ESPN in prime time that night. It's going to be a great time in College Station. Yeah. Well, that's really all we got for you this week. Next week, we'll probably dive into some Week 1 games. We'll probably start looking at the Aggie football season a little bit, as well as some other updates and whatnot throughout the week of sports. We appreciate you for listening. We hope that you share us with somebody that hasn't heard us before, and we hope you come back next week. Thanks. Gig 'em.
Gig 'em.